Hi, my name is Maria, and I'm going to present on my Civic Summer at the MICA Project. So when we talk about immigration in this country, one of the first things we talk about is why don't people just come the right way, or why don't people just get in line? But as you can see from this graphic, it's not that simple. And many of the ways to immigrate in this country are very limited and end up with people not having any pathway at all. So one of the pathways that do exist, one of the most popular is petitioning for a family member. But depending on what country you're from, if you're from India or Mexico, that petition could take 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And that for some people is too long of a wait. Specifically, some people are fleeing poverty, are fleeing violence, and cannot wait that long to be reunited with family members. So they make the very difficult decision of crossing the border, either through the desert or through the Rio Grande. And that itself is a very dangerous journey that has led to thousands and thousands of people dying, a lot of them with unmarked graves. And this graphic just shows a little bit of that. So earlier this month, it was Day of the Dead, which is a holiday in Latin America that celebrates the people who have left us. And in Philadelphia, this altar was made to honor immigrant children who died trying to cross the border. But of the few people who are successful in crossing the border, the journey doesn't end when you get to the United States. So if an immigrant is successful in crossing the border and is eligible for asylum, then they have to, within a year of crossing the border, petition for asylum in front of an immigration judge and in an immigration courtroom, very much like the one that is on screen. Asylum seekers aren't given representation by the state, so the burden of finding a legal representative falls on them. If an asylum seeker does not have legal representation, their denial rate is 91%. But if they do, it falls nationally to 57.6%, and here in Kansas City, which is our local immigration circuit, it's 75.6%. But for many of the people fleeing all these conditions, getting private representation is not an option. But if you're in St. Louis, if you're a low-income migrant in St. Louis, you can turn to the MICA Project, which is where I interned this summer. The MICA Project stands for Migrant and Immigrant Community Action Project, and through a combination of advocacy, legal services, and something else I forgot. We support immigrants to find community resources and also connect them to our own attorneys or other attorneys around St. Louis. We also serve people who aren't eligible in other areas, so people from like Southern Illinois or Eastern Missouri, because a lot of people fall in the gaps between there. As part of our advocacy, over the summer, President Trump announced that in 10 major U.S. cities there were going to be major immigration raids, and the MICA Project is one of the first places people in the community turn to find information as to what to do about this. So our phone lines were full of people asking, like, am I going to be deported? What can I do? So what we did, essentially, because we had no real answers, because we have no idea what's going to happen, was canvass out in the community in combination with other St. Louis nonprofits, including IFCA. So we basically just were walking around St. Louis, handing people know your rights cards, and just trying to get the word out. So as part of the intern team, one of the days we were out of the office the entire day just canvassing around like Cherokee Street, which is the largest concentration of Latinx-owned businesses and restaurants in St. Louis. So we came in, talked to different business owners in Spanish and just said, here's some Know Your Rights cards, here's the MICA Project's number. We're trying to get a hotline set up in case their ICE is spotted in St. Louis. And luckily, nothing horrible happened this summer, but even if it had, I know that the people at MICA and other people around St. Louis would be there to support the community, which is something that I was not expecting coming in, just because St. Louis has like a pretty small Latinx population. It's under 5%. So I was extremely humbled and appreciative of all the support that people who don't even identify as immigrants or Latinx showed for that community. This is a photo of a Never Again march organized by Never Again St. Louis in response to the children being detained at the border, basically. And luckily, through all the advocacy and efforts, we were able to establish the first pro se asylum clinic to actually help people who are going into these immigration hearings have some type of representation and hopefully get their denial rates lowered, because if they have representation, even if it's pro se, it's better than nothing, as we've seen. And this continues as today arguments for DACA are being heard in the Supreme Court in DC. So this is an issue that nationally, locally, is still very present. And the only, yeah, and thanks to the people that are here, I think, is the only way that we're going to continue fighting for this. Thanks.